Hi guys, so I thought I'd come on here and talk about some of the recent monster shows I've been watching of late. I thought it'd be fun because it'd be a way to sort of keep some of the length off of my 3-monthly TV and film wrap-ups. So I've decided that three shows kind of fit a monster theme, and they were the lengthier reviews, so I thought I'd just do like a 3 review of them. So we're starting with The Witcher. So this is season 1, it recently came out on Netflix and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. So The Witcher is based off of a series of books that then became popular as a game franchise, and then finally Netflix took hold of the idea and decided to create a TV series of it. And even though I've never played the games, I can definitely see some of the inspiration, particularly when it came to like the fighting scenes. They definitely felt like a game sequence, if you know what I mean. And again, even though I've never read the books, I feel like the story was well established as it went on, in terms of like who the main characters were, their kind of goals in a sense, or them trying to find each other in a way, or find themselves. And I feel like that was established well enough, but I would like to go back to the books and kind of read it in a way that will ultimately make sense. That didn't make sense, but I feel like if you have seen the show, maybe you understand what I'm saying. I'm being pretty coy with that, I know. So back to those fighting scenes, they were done really well. At first I was like, whoa, these are pretty intense, but the camera angling just felt like you were there. So that's why I feel like it would definitely mirror the games quite well, because it's like you're involved doing it. I don't know, it's just the way it was filmed. It's pretty cool actually. So I do think I need to go back to the original source material of the books and then the games, because I think I would love them. My friend at work says I can borrow her copy of The Witcher 3, which I'm really looking forward to having a go, and I will eventually read the books. I know they're quite beefy, chunky books, so I don't know when I'll get to them, but I would love to regardless. I will say though, first episode in, I was pretty lost. To be honest, it was probably somewhat due to the fact that I fell asleep and then watched it in parts and went rewatched bits that I fell asleep to and then came back. So it was a little bit of like a patchy mess, and because of that, like, names were lost to me because I wasn't fully paying attention in one sitting to that first episode. But there was also some confusion throughout the whole series for me. So both me and my boyfriend sitting down to watch it were very confused how much time had passed. Sometimes it felt like things were happening mid-episode that seemed like it spanned like years or months, but it wasn't clarified like in a little subtitle like 3 months later sort of thing. It just happened, and for that it left us both feeling kind of dazed and confused and not entirely sure when we were as opposed to where, if you know what I mean. However, we did get told by a family member that this show was filmed, or the episodes were done in a particular way to, I guess, cause this effect in some way. They were filmed in an interesting order, not playing linearly, but played, I don't know, I don't want to give exact details away of what they said, just in case it's kind of like a oh, I get it moment, and I don't want to ruin that for you, but they're not supposed to be played in linear order is what I've been told. I feel like if you know, it makes sense and it's a pretty cool like way to film something, but for most of us seeing it, I think it was a little bit jarring and confusing, and it felt like it wasn't structured properly if you didn't know that that's how it was supposed to be. So because I didn't know that, I was a little bit like lost. Like, I was enjoying the show, I was enjoying the action, the characters, the story, but I was super confused at scenes that felt like they were from before a certain time, or I don't know, it just felt very confusing, which I now understand to be how it was intended to be presented. There's actually some really interesting discussions on infertility, regarding some of these like created characters. So the Witcher is a being that is essentially a monster hunter, but he has been modified and adapted to be able to use these particular senses to overcome monsters and to do his job basically. But because of the way he's created, he is sterile, he's infertile. There's another character in this as well, another major character who again goes through a scheme where they are adapted and changed to become the better them, but because of that the price is infertility. And a lot of discussion on how particular characters were longing for a child. They wanted the not even the child, but the option to produce a child if they wanted to, and the fact that that was taken away during the process of their rebirth was something that made them angry and driven. And it was very, very interesting. You probably know who I'm talking about if you've played the games or you've watched the show or whatever, but I don't want to hint at any spoilers. I just want to discuss that separately as its own thing. And I think that was really interesting because you're in a fantasy world and rarely topics like this is discussed. So yeah, I was interested in the way that that was perceived, how the certain characters differed in opinions, but also like how you can see some sort of similarities as well in terms of the whole infertility thing. Is very interesting, definitely. Anyway, for some reason I got in my head that it was 10 episodes, so when we came to the end I was very like, oh, where's the rest? You know what I mean? And I can't believe how long we've had to wait for, well, it feels like forever until the next season's out, but it is definitely confirmed at the point that I'm filming this, and I'm really looking forward to starting it. Random things, you know, I like to recognise other actors from other things, but I realised that village girl that I cannot remember her name is from Tracy Beaker, and I used to love watching Tracy Beaker, so that's cool. This girl doesn't look like she's aged at all. Anyway, I will definitely be checking out more series. I do feel like there's a potential that they could go super crazy, latch onto the hype and do way too many series to the point that it kind of loses effect. But I will say, for now, I will be holding on for the next series because the first season definitely left some unanswered questions for me. Next up, I want to talk about BBC's Dracula, which aired over, I want to say January. They came out with some cool sounding shows throughout like January period, and like they were releasing a lot of cool new stuff. So yeah, this is the 2019 TV Dracula series, which I gave, again, a 4 out of 5 stars. Funnily enough, I feel like I only really have a very vague knowledge of the story of Dracula, Count Dracula. One where I believe I have yet to actively read the novel, despite wanting to. But then I also have this very vivid memory of hanging out with some friends in this like sort of camping sort of scenario, and me reading Bram Stoker's Dracula. But I can't find it catalogued anywhere on like my Goodreads or anything like that, and it's such a drifted memory. It's almost like I could have made it up, but I also feel like I have read it, so I don't know. Anyway, it's one of those things where I kind of know the general gist of it, but I feel like I need to actively resource myself, look into the original resources and read them properly and know it well. Anyway, the way this was filmed was pretty unique for me. I felt like it was done, again, once again, interesting is the word of the day. It was done in a very interesting way. I feel like it was very modernised. The way it was filmed, even when we are in the traditional Dracula setting, it felt a little bit modern. I think probably with some of the things they were discussing and how they went about it, and then that sort of made sense because we have like a bit to the future, not the future, like present day that happens, and I feel like maybe they just wasn't a distinctive past and present feel. It did feel like it was, now looking back in it, building up to this modern setting that comes a little bit later. It is only like 3 episodes, but you can tell that they almost wanted to get to that present day a bit too quick. I don't know if they were trying to transition you with the way that they were playing this like more traditional scene in a modern way, but it just felt a little bit too new. I don't know, maybe they just wanted to do something different with Dracula because it's something that's been done so many times. I realise I'm just like word vomiting at this point. Unfortunately, for the first episode I just couldn't fully absorb myself despite it being one of the shorter series. As I say, it's 3 episodes, but they're an hour and a half long, so it felt like a bit of a drag. The first episode I was kind of distracted, just watching bits every now and then when something interesting was happening, and then kind of doing some other stuff. But I'm glad that I managed to enjoy it in the end. Yeah, I must say, I would say despite that, I am happy that I continued on with it. See, Dracula, the actor for Dracula, was very compelling, so I think if anything it was him and the way he was speaking that was gripping my attention more than anything. And because I had that little bit to latch on, I found that for me the story, the plot and all that sort of thing grew more interesting. And after the initial detachment of the first episode, things became more shocking, I became more engrossed, and I was enjoying it a lot more. I did find like some scenes very jarring though, particularly at the end of one episode there was pretty much a massive massacre. The beginning of the next episode just didn't match up. Like, it made sense after, but in that time period I felt like I was missing something, like an episode had forgot to record or something, like, because it felt too civil, and I was like, how does this connect with that? Again, it does eventually, but it was just too jarring, and it was one of those moments I can imagine people switching off because it's like, I don't get it, this doesn't make any sense, we're not coming to any fruition from how this is connecting. But yeah, again, once again, I am glad that I stuck with it, although it was unnecessarily confusing at times. But again, I think they just had in their head they wanted to make it more unique, they wanted to make it more fresh and current, because again, Dracula has been done so many times. Yeah, things ended up turning to be quite clever. I wasn't sure how it was going to drag out, because even though it was just 3 episodes, the an hour and a half length of them sometimes did feel like, okay, how are they going to fill this space, you know? But they ended up always doing so rather effectively. Also, the character that plays Liv, although in the grand scheme of things she only really had a very small part in it, it was interesting seeing her as a complete different role. Again, I'm always talking about the show Years and Years, but this character is a character in Years and Years, and it was just cool seeing her acting very different to how she acted there. And I think she's an actress that I'll look out for shows and anything she's in the future. Just need to figure out what her name is. I'll look at the cast later and see what else she's been in. Oh, and that guy, I don't know if any of you go to the cinema, like the Cineworld cinema, but that advert with the guy is basically a Cineworld advert, and he's going to the movies every day. The day's repeated itself. He was in this. That was strange to see him. I don't know. It was just like, oh, it's you. But anyway, yeah, this was a pretty cool series. Stick with it if you're interested. It should be on BBC iPlayer still. Stay with it. It's not really long in the grand scheme of things, but it will get confusing. It will make sense eventually, I promise. And then lastly, I'm going to be reviewing October Faction, which is another Netflix TV show. This series 1, I assume there's going to be another series. I don't know, it's left unanswered questions yet again. And once again, another 4 out of 5 stars. Honestly though, this was really fantastic. I enjoyed it so much. It's another show that's recommended to me by my other half's dad. He said I'd like it because it's really quirky. I used to absolutely hate being called quirky because I was like, what does that mean? I remember my mum used to say it to me and I was like, where does this word come from? What is quirky? I don't like it. But now I embrace it because it is quirky, and I kind of am quirky and I like being quirky. But yeah, I guess that's me then, and you know what? He weren't wrong. I loved it. So it is rated as teen, but honestly it doesn't come across as juvenile as some shows. So it's about this family of 4, 2 twins, a mum and a dad, and as you can imagine, I've grouped it in this monster TV show review because they're monster hunters. The children don't know about their parents' line of work, they don't know about their family's line of work, but as the series progresses, they become involved in some strange things, and they worry how they will be received. They try to deny it for a while, but it's like it's clear that they can't ignore it any longer, and it causes quite a clash between the parents and the children, but it's very interesting. It is rated teen, but to me it doesn't come across as juvenile as you might assume for something rated teen. It's actually quite mature in some ways, especially I find because we focus quite a lot on the parents and their career and stuff like that, so it didn't feel like a lot of high school-y pep all the time. Like, there are a lot of high school scenes, but it's not just focused on that. You get like the real adults and the real life and stuff like that, and it's quite dramatic and gritty and dark. So yeah, I feel like teen's not an accurate rating because it's not quite teen. The monsters within this kind of remind me of the monsters in Grimm, like the way they're done. The sad thing is though, it's kind of scarier because these monsters are really like everyone else, and I think that accurately represents reality. People that are different, race, gender, sexuality, etc. It's just an excuse for people to target and attack them because they're different, and I feel like this almost had that as a little subliminal message, if you know what I mean, because the monsters, not all of them should be grouped together as hostile, murderous, because just because you're basing it on the fact that they're monsters, they've adapted to live as normal people, if you know what I mean, and they're not all murderers. Like, how can you group a whole population? Some of these monsters aren't even the same species, and they're grouping them all collectively as this murderous thing that needs to be killed and culled, basically. I've got to say, the hints of orange everywhere is absolutely beautiful. We've got Viv's hair, we've got the trees, and it's just, it brings in that warmth October feeling, that very autumnal, cool, Halloween-y vibe. I will say though, I was quite disappointed in the last episode. I feel like we didn't wrap up a lot of the stuff that we were alluding to and building up to throughout the series. There was an actual like massive carnage in the episode, and I felt like that was kind of shimmied over. It flicked from that scene to a scene in the woods, but then it didn't go back to that carnage, which is what I really cared about. So I'm hoping they'll explore that a bit more when we hopefully get a second season. But yeah, all of these shows I felt fit perfectly together, and yeah, I hope you decide to check them out. If you have checked them out, let me know what you think. Let me know if you will be checking them out. I know I rambled quite a lot, but I just needed to get this off my chest. Imagine if I kept this in my wrap up, that would have been forever long. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you in another video soon. Bye.